Have you ever met someone and felt instantly drawn to them, as if you've known them before? Like they stepped straight out of a dream you can't quite remember. It's not just chemistry. It's not just attraction. Carl Jung believed it's something much deeper, a hidden image within every man's psyche called the anima. So let me ask you this. Could it be that the woman you keep falling for doesn't actually exist, that she's not a real person at all, but a reflection of a powerful archetype living inside your unconscious mind? Jung called this inner image the anima, the feminine archetype every man carries deep within. She's not your mother. She's not your lover. She's the emotional blueprint that silently shapes who you're drawn to, how you love, and what kind of woman you chase, even when it doesn't make sense. And here's the fascinating part. This inner feminine energy doesn't just influence your relationships. It can hijack them. It can make you fall in love with someone not for who they are, but for what they represent in your inner world. So why should you keep watching? Because once you understand what the anima really is, you'll begin to see why you keep falling for the same kind of woman over and over again. You'll uncover the emotional patterns quietly running the show behind every connection you've ever had. And more importantly, you'll learn how to break free from projections and start relating from a place of clarity, maturity, and true emotional freedom. This isn't just about love. It's about reclaiming your inner life. So if you've ever felt confused about your romantic choices, if you've ever been pulled into a relationship that felt fated but later fell apart, you're not alone. The anima might be the missing piece you've been searching for. Let's dive deeper and uncover the hidden force within every man that no one talks about, but every man feels. Let's take a step back and ask a powerful question. What is really happening inside a man when he falls in love? Carl Jung, the legendary Swiss psychoanalyst, had an answer that goes far beyond biology or personality types. He believed that within every man lives a hidden feminine force, a psychological imprint called the anima. The anima isn't just a poetic idea. It's a core archetype, a symbolic image rooted deep in the unconscious mind of every man. It's the emotional, intuitive, and vulnerable part of his psyche, the part that often gets suppressed in a world that tells men to be strong, rational, and detached. So why does this matter? Because if you're a man, or if you love a man, understanding the anima might completely change the way you see attraction, love, heartbreak, and even self-growth. Jung explained that the anima is the counterpart to the animus, the masculine archetype that lives in the unconscious of women. These aren't just traits or surface behaviors. They're powerful energies, blueprints that influence how we relate to the opposite sex and to our own inner balance. In the psyche of a man, the anima shows up in many forms. Sometimes she appears in dreams. Sometimes she shows up in art, poetry, or those deep emotional yearnings that seem to come out of nowhere. But more often she shows up through projection when a man unconsciously casts his inner feminine image onto a real woman. Ever heard someone say, "I don't know why, but I'm just completely obsessed with her"? That might be the anima at work. This inner image, shaped by early experiences with women, cultural ideals, and personal fantasies, can be incredibly powerful, but also deceptive. Because the man isn't really falling for the real woman in front of him. He's falling for what she represents inside of him. And here's where things get tricky. If a man doesn't recognize the anima within, he might bounce from one intense relationship to another, constantly chasing that feeling of soulmate energy, only to feel disillusioned when the fantasy fades. Because no real person can live up to a projection, it's like trying to hug a shadow you'll never feel what you're reaching for. And yet, the anima isn't the enemy. She's not there to trick or sabotage you. She's there to guide you if you're willing to pay attention. You see, in Jungian psychology, the anima represents more than romance. She symbolizes a man's connection to his inner world, his capacity to feel, to empathize, to be creative, to reflect, and to love deeply not just others, but himself. But here's the problem. Many men are taught directly or indirectly to reject these traits. Don't be too emotional. Man up, don't cry. Sound familiar. These cultural messages push men to suppress their anima. And when something is repressed, it doesn't go away. It just sinks into the unconscious and starts acting from the shadows. That's why many men feel confused, disconnected, or emotionally stuck, especially in relationships. They're being pulled by unconscious forces they've never been taught to see, let alone integrate. So what do we do with this? We start by becoming aware. Awareness is the beginning of healing. When a man recognizes that part of the woman he's idealizing may actually be a mirror of his own unmet emotional needs, he gains power, not to control others, but to understand himself. And once that happens, the anima can stop being a projection and start becoming a partner in his inner evolution. She becomes a voice of intuition, a source of empathy, a wellspring of creativity, and maybe most importantly, a bridge to emotional wholeness. So the next time you find yourself deeply drawn to someone, ask yourself, is it really them I'm seeing? Or is it a part of myself calling out for connection? That question alone can change the entire way you relate to love and to yourself. Let's go a little deeper, because to truly understand the anima, we need to explore where she comes from. The truth is, the anima isn't born from thin air. She isn't some mystical idea randomly implanted into the male psyche. She's shaped over time, often starting in the earliest years of childhood. Think back to the first women you ever knew. For most of us, that's our mother or whoever played that mothering role. She was likely the first emotional bond, the first voice that comforted, the first presence that nurtured. And whether that relationship was loving, complicated, or even painful, it left an imprint. Carl Jung believed that the anima is built layer by layer through these early experiences. It's not just about biology, it's about emotion, memory, and meaning. But it doesn't stop with the mother. There's also the grandmother who told you stories, the teacher who believed in you, the babysitter who made you feel safe, and even the female characters in movies, books, or cartoons that shaped your imagination. Every interaction with a woman, especially in your formative years, added a brushstroke to the inner portrait of the anima. And because the unconscious mind works through symbols, not logic, this inner woman becomes more of a mythic figure than a real person. Over time, she becomes a kind of emotional compass. Not a literal woman, but a symbolic one representing tenderness, wisdom, mystery, beauty, comfort, or passion. She might resemble a nurturing mother, a sensual muse, a divine goddess, or a mysterious enchantress. It all depends on your unique history. Here's where it gets tricky. This inner figure, the anima, can become so emotionally charged, so idealized, that she starts to feel more real than reality itself. She turns into what Jung called an ideal image. But the catch is, she's not real. She's not a person. She's not someone you can date, marry, or hold on to. She's a projection of memory, emotion, and symbol living inside you. And that's where many relationships go off a course. Imagine this: you meet someone, and you swear there's an instant connection. You're convinced they're the one. You can't explain it, but they seem to embody everything you've been searching for. But after a few weeks or months, things start to unravel. They're not who you thought they were. You feel disillusioned, disappointed, even betrayed. What happened? It's likely that your anima projection was at play. You didn't fall in love with the real person. You fell in love with the inner image you've been carrying your entire life, shaped by your childhood, your memories, your longings. Now let's be clear, this isn't your fault. This is how the unconscious works. It's normal, but it's also powerful. And if you don't become aware of it, it can lead to repetitive heartbreak. So here's a question to reflect on: how much of your past relationships were based on reality, and how much were based on who you wanted that person to be? It's a hard question, I know, but it's one worth asking. Because when we understand the roots of our inner images, where they come from, how they formed, we begin to reclaim our emotional power. And the truth is, culture plays a huge role in this too. From the Disney princesses we watched as kids, to the femme fatales in Hollywood films, to the perfect girlfriend tropes in romantic comedies. We've been fed versions of the anima our entire lives. She's beautiful, mysterious, nurturing, seductive, intuitive. She says the right thing. She heals your wounds. She completes you. But here's the thing: no human being can live up to that image. It's too much pressure, and it's not fair to them or to you. So the question becomes, are you chasing a woman, or are you chasing a symbol? When you're unaware of your anima, she controls you. But when you begin to recognize her origins, her patterns, and her influence, you begin to integrate her. You stop projecting and start relating. That's the real gift of Jungian insight. Not to shame us for our unconscious patterns, but to shine a light on them so we can live more consciously, more truthfully. Because in the end, the anima isn't something to get rid of. She's part of your inner world. She just needs to be seen, not projected. And that awareness, it can change everything: how you love, how you relate, and how you come home to yourself. Now that we've uncovered what the anima is and where she comes from, let's explore something even more fascinating: her evolution. According to Carl Jung, the anima doesn't stay fixed. She grows. She develops in stages like a mirror that changes shape as a man matures emotionally and spiritually. And if you've ever wondered why your idea of the ideal woman changed over the years, or why your relationships feel so different now than they did in your 20s, this might be the reason. Jung outlined 4 distinct stages of the anima. Each one reflects a deeper level of awareness, a different kind of connection, and a unique challenge to overcome. Let's walk through them one by one. And as I do, ask yourself, which stage resonates most with where you are today? Stage 1: Eve, the instinctual woman. The first stage is called Eve, named after the biblical figure. Here, the anima represents the instinctual, biological woman. She's the nurturer, the caretaker, the motherly figure, yet also the one who evokes primal desire. In this stage, a man is often attracted to a woman for survival-based reasons: physical intimacy, caretaking, emotional dependency. It's the kind of attraction that's urgent, emotional, magnetic, but often unconscious. Think of the man who constantly seeks validation through sexual conquest, or the man who falls in love quickly with anyone who gives him comfort or affection. At this level, the anima is powerful but raw. The challenge here is that it's often not love, it's need. And when the need isn't met, it quickly turns into frustration, obsession, or disappointment. Look, stage 2. Helen, the beautiful image. The second stage is called Helen, inspired by Helen of Troy, the face that launched 1,000 ships. Here, the anima transforms from the biological to the aesthetic. She becomes a symbol of beauty, grace, and idealized femininity. In this stage, a man is drawn to elegance, charm, and allure. It's not just about instinct, it's about image romance and the thrill of the chase. This is the stage of the dream girl, the woman who seems perfect, untouchable, almost otherworldly. Men in this stage often chase after women who reflect their fantasies, but not necessarily their reality. The danger here, projection runs wild. The man may fall in love with how a woman looks, sounds, or moves, but never really sees who she is inside. Eventually, disappointment sets in again. Not because she failed him, but because the image was never real. Stage 3, Mary, the virtuous woman. The third stage is known as Mary, representing the Virgin Mary or other sacred feminine figures. Here, the anima evolves into a symbol of purity, virtue, and spiritual grace. This is no longer about sex or fantasy. It gets about idealized goodness. The man seeks someone who is morally upright, kind, nurturing, emotionally intelligent, perhaps even angelic. In this stage, the man starts to respect and admire women, not just for their appearance, but for their character. He may still project an ideal, but it's based on values, not just attraction. This is also where deeper relationships begin to form. Real intimacy becomes possible because the anima is no longer just a fantasy or impulse, but a guiding moral force. Still, even here, projection can linger. Sometimes a woman is put on such a high pedestal that she can't be human. She has to be flawless, and that's an impossible burden to carry. Next, stage 4, Sophia, the wise woman. Finally, we reach the fourth stage, Sophia, the Greek word for wisdom. Sophia is not a fantasy. She is not a projection. She is integrated. She represents inner wholeness. At this stage, the man no longer seeks someone to complete him, because he has already begun the journey of completing himself. He sees women as equals, not as saviors, objects of desire, or spiritual ideals. He listens, connects, and relates from a place of maturity and inner strength. Sophia shows up not just in women, but in the man's relationship to his own intuition, creativity, and emotional depth. This is the goal of Jung's individuation process, to integrate the feminine within, so the outer world no longer controls you with longing, confusion, or projection. It's the difference between needing love to survive and offering love from a place of wholeness. So, where do you see yourself right now? Are you still drawn to the raw energy of Eve? Are you caught in the illusion of Helen? Do you idealize the purity of Mary? Or are you beginning to walk with the wisdom of Sophia? There are no right or wrong answers. We all move through these stages at different times, sometimes returning to earlier levels when we're triggered or unhealed. But the invitation is clear: to grow, to evolve not just how we love others, but how we understand ourselves. Because the anima isn't just about women, it's about you. And the more conscious you become of her presence, the more powerful your relationships, your creativity, and your sense of inner peace will become. Now that you know what the anima is and how she evolves through stages, let's talk about something that affects almost every man, yet very few are ever taught to recognize: projection. Carl Jung believed that when a man doesn't consciously understand his anima, the inner feminine image that lives in his psyche, he unconsciously projects her onto real women in the outer world. Let me explain what that means. Imagine you meet someone. You feel an overwhelming connection almost instantly. You're drawn to them not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. It feels like fate, like you finally met the one. But here's the hard truth: that intensity, that sense of familiarity, it may have nothing to do with who they really are. It might be your anima at work, quietly pulling strings from the inside. You see, the anima is powerful precisely because she lives in the unconscious. She's built from your earliest experiences with women, your mother, your caregivers, your first crush, the characters you admired in movies or books. She becomes a symbol of the feminine, not a real woman. And when you don't recognize her as internal, she gets projected externally onto someone who seems to match her energy, her shape, her vibe. It's like wearing emotional glasses you don't even know are tinted. You're not falling in love with the person in front of you. You're falling in love with the image you're casting onto them. That's why, for so many men, relationships start like a dream and end in confusion. You fall fast, you fall hard, and then it all falls apart. Why? Because no real human being can live up to a projection. You might have been drawn to her grace, her laughter, her mystery. But maybe she never truly understood you. Maybe she didn't want the role you were unconsciously assigning her. Or maybe you never truly saw her. This is the heartbreak of the anima when left unconscious. And it's not just romantic. It can influence how a man reacts to co-workers, friends, even public figures placing emotional weight or expectations onto women that don't align with reality. I've known men who idolized a woman from afar for years, only to finally meet her and feel completely disillusioned. Why? Because she was never the person they imagined. She never could be. She was a stand-in for the anima, a ghost of the inner world projected outward. And here's something important. This doesn't make a man weak, broken, or immature. It makes him human. We all project. It's how the unconscious tries to express itself. But if we want to build relationships rooted in truth, not fantasy, we have to bring those unconscious patterns into the light. Here's how you can begin. Start noticing patterns. Do you tend to fall for the same type over and over again? Not just in looks, but in energy, emotional availability, or the way they make you feel. Reflect on your early relationships. What kind of emotional presence did your mother or female role models have? Was it nurturing, chaotic, absent, overbearing? That early imprint matters. Ask, am I in love with this person or the idea of them? That one question alone can save you from months or years of emotional confusion. And most importantly, learn to turn inward. The more you integrate the anima by listening to your own emotions, trusting your intuition, embracing creativity, and developing your inner life, the less you'll need to find her outside. The anima isn't there to punish you with heartbreak. She's there to guide you back to yourself. She says, stop looking for me in others. I'm already within you. And when you start relating from that place, relationships shift. They become clearer, deeper, more grounded. You no longer chase someone to complete you. You connect because you want to, not because you have to. That's the freedom of becoming conscious of the anima. You stop projecting. You start relating. You stop chasing an illusion. You start building real love. So let me ask you this. Have you ever fallen for someone so quickly, so deeply, only to realize later that they weren't who you thought they were? That's not failure. That's a signpost. A call to look inward. Because the more you understand your anima, the more your relationships, romantic or otherwise, will stop being cycles of projection and become journeys of mutual truth. And isn't that what we're all really looking for? So far, we've explored how the anima forms within us, how she develops, influences love, and shows up in our relationships. But here's something most people overlook, even if you've never read Jung or thought about archetypes. The anima is already shaping your world through culture, movies, icons, and even your childhood heroes. Let me explain. Carl Jung believed the anima doesn't just live inside individual men, she lives in the collective imagination. She appears in myths, fairy tales, songs, and perhaps most powerfully in film. In fact, you've probably met her hundreds of times, without even realizing it. Think about it. When you hear the name Marilyn Monroe, what comes to mind? Maybe her white dress blowing in the wind, her soft voice, her radiant yet fragile beauty. She wasn't just a celebrity. She embodied a particular feminine ideal that captured the attention of an entire generation. Now consider Audrey Hepburn, elegant, refined, kind-eyed, and almost ethereal. She was the symbol of grace and innocence, a kind of quiet inner strength wrapped in softness. These women weren't just admired for their talent or appearance. They became projections of deeper desires, emotional yearnings, and symbolic meaning. They became anima figures, and Hollywood knows this. That's why almost every classic or modern movie features a magnetic female character, a woman who's more than just a person. She's a guide, a muse, a mystery, a challenge, a dream. Let's take Belle from Beauty and the Beast. She's nurturing, intelligent, kind, and emotionally grounded. She sees beyond the surface, and her love transforms the beast. To many men, Belle isn't just a Disney character, she's the symbol of redemptive love. The kind of woman who sees the real you and loves you anyway. Then there's Trinity from The Matrix, cold and calculated on the outside, but emotionally loyal and spiritually connected. She awakens Neo to his true purpose, not by fixing him, but by standing beside him as an equal. She's strong, but not masculine. Intense, but not aggressive. She's the Anima in her warrior form, guiding the hero toward individuation. And that's the thing, in almost every hero's journey, the hero doesn't complete the quest alone. There's usually a female figure, mysterious, powerful, wise, who helps him transform. She's not just a love interest. She's the soul guide, the mirror, the key. From Galadriel in The Lord of the Rings, to Lilu in The Fifth Element, to Neytiri in Avatar. These women represent more than themselves. They reflect the anima, the internal feminine energy that pushes the man to evolve, to feel, to wake up. And it doesn't stop with fiction. Even in pop music and celebrity culture, the anima thrives. When male artists write about the woman who haunts them, who heals them, who breaks them or saves them, it's often not about a specific person. It's about the image, the symbol of the ideal feminine they're projecting. So why does this matter? Because these portrayals don't just entertain us, they shape us. They influence how we see women, how we expect them to behave, what we believe they should offer emotionally, sexually, spiritually. And when we internalize these cultural anima figures without question, we run the risk of placing unrealistic expectations on real people. We want Belle, but she's human. We want Trinity, but she has her own wounds. We want someone to complete our story, when in truth, we're the ones who have to do that work. Here's the deeper truth. These symbolic women aren't bad. They're meaningful. They point toward parts of ourselves we need to develop our capacity to feel, to love, to be vulnerable, to connect with meaning. But we have to remember, they are mirrors, not destinations. So let me ask you this. What fictional women, or even real-life icons, have you been emotionally drawn to? Was it their appearance, their energy, their mystery? And more importantly, what part of you were they activating? That's the real value of seeing the anima in culture, not to escape into fantasy, but to use these symbols as tools of self-understanding. Because the more you become conscious of how these archetypes shape your perception, the more you can relate to women and to yourself with clarity and depth. You stop looking for a perfect character and start relating to a real human being. And in doing so, you take one step closer to integrating your own inner world. So how do you know if your anima, the inner feminine image we've been talking about, is silently controlling your emotional life? The truth is, most men don't realize it. They just keep repeating the same patterns in love and relationships, thinking it's just bad luck or, I guess I fall too fast. But underneath those patterns, there's often something much deeper at play. So in this part of the video, let's explore the subtle but powerful signs that you might be under the influence of the anima, without even knowing it. And I want you to listen closely because what I'm about to share isn't theory. It's something I've seen in friends, clients, and even in myself. Sign number 1. You're intensely drawn to a certain type of person. Over and over again, let's start here. If you find yourself repeatedly attracted to the same kind of woman, almost like you have no control over it, there's a good chance the anima is behind that pull. It could be a certain physical appearance, a kind of energy, mysterious, nurturing, artistic. Or maybe an emotional pattern, someone who needs saving, someone who's emotionally unavailable, someone who reflects your childhood dynamic. This kind of attraction often feels magnetic, like fate, like I don't know what it is, but I'm hooked. But here's the thing, when that feeling bypasses logic, when it ignores red flags, when it feels too familiar too fast, that's a signal. You're probably not seeing the person for who they really are. You're seeing your anima projection, a symbol that your unconscious has attached to this person. It's not love. It's recognition. You're not meeting them for the first time. You're meeting yourself reflected in their presence. Sign number 2. You're often disappointed in love because people aren't who you imagined. This one hits hard for many people. You fall in love with the idea of someone. The first few weeks or months feel magical. You imagine how deep, kind, mysterious, or emotionally connected they are. But slowly, reality sets in. They don't respond the way you hoped. They're not as emotionally available. They don't understand you the way you dreamed they would. And you're left wondering, what happened? Well, nothing happened. You simply projected your anima onto someone who couldn't carry it. This is one of the most painful experiences a man can face, falling out of love, not because the person changed, but because the illusion dissolved. You might even start blaming them. They tricked me. They're not who I thought they were. But the truth is, they never were. They were just a screen for your inner world to be projected onto. This doesn't mean love isn't real. It means that conscious love requires seeing clearly, not through the lens of unconscious longing. Sign number 3. When a relationship ends, it feels like you've lost a piece of your soul. Have you ever experienced a breakup that felt unbearable? Not just sadness or heartbreak, but a kind of spiritual emptiness. Like you didn't just lose a person, you lost a part of yourself. That's another red flag that the anima was deeply involved. Because when you project your anima onto someone, you're not just connecting with them, you're attaching to an inner ideal, a piece of your own psyche. So when they leave, or when the relationship ends, it's as if your inner world collapses. You don't just grieve the relationship. You grieve the loss of meaning, the loss of direction, the loss of emotional grounding. You might even say things like, I don't know who I am anymore. I feel completely empty. I can't imagine my life without them. And while those feelings are very real, they often come from losing touch with a part of yourself you had unknowingly externalized. It's not just heartbreak. It's disorientation, because your inner feminine, your emotional compass, was tied to someone outside of you. So, What can you do about it? Here's the good news. Recognizing these signs is the first step to healing. You don't need to stop loving deeply. You don't need to give up on romance. But you do need to reclaim your projections and bring your anima back home. When you realize that the magnetic pull you feel isn't always about the other person, but about what they're reflecting within you, you begin to see clearly. You stop chasing emotional highs. You start building relationships on solid ground. And you'll begin to relate not from need or illusion, but from truth and wholeness. So let me leave you with this question. Are you loving the person in front of you or the version of them you've created in your mind? That one question might just change the way you love forever. So now the big question is, what do you actually do with all of this? How do you stop being unconsciously controlled by the anima and start building a healthy, conscious relationship with her? Here's the truth. You don't need to fight the anima. You don't need to shut her down or deny her presence. You just need to become aware of her and begin the work of integration. And it starts with one powerful realization. You are projecting. That's right. The moment you realize, wait a minute, I might not be seeing this person clearly, you've already taken the first step. Because projection thrives in the dark. But once you shine a light on it, it starts to loosen its grip. So the first key is recognition. Ask yourself, am I expecting this person to fulfill something in me I haven't yet given myself? Am I idealizing them or truly seeing them? Just that inner pause can prevent months or even years of emotional confusion. But it doesn't stop there. The second step is what Carl Jung called individuation, and the process of becoming whole by integrating all the hidden or underdeveloped parts of yourself. And that includes the anima. What does that look like in real life? It means starting to embrace your own sensitivity instead of outsourcing it to a partner. It means allowing yourself to feel grief, love, vulnerability, creativity. Not as weaknesses, but as sacred parts of being human. When you stop expecting someone else to carry those qualities for you, you reclaim them. And as you do, the anima moves from being an unconscious force that projects outward to a conscious companion that lives within. The final step, let go of the fantasy. Stop searching for the perfect woman to complete your story. Instead, learn to sit with your inner world, to listen, to feel, to grow. Because the more you understand your own heart, the less likely you are to get lost in someone else's shadow. So here's the question I'll leave you with today. What part of yourself have you been trying to find in someone else? Maybe it's time to bring it home. So here's the truth. The anima isn't your enemy. She's not something to fear or erase. She's a part of you, a mirror of your emotional depth, your sensitivity, your longing for connection and meaning. But if you're unaware of her presence, she can quietly run your life. She can cause you to fall in love with illusions, chase emotional highs, and feel devastated when real people can't live up to the inner ideal you've unknowingly projected onto them. That's why this work matters. Because once you begin to recognize the anima not as a person outside of you, but as an energy within you, you step into a new level of awareness. You stop blaming others for emotional confusion. You stop seeking wholeness in someone else. And you start reconnecting with the parts of yourself you may have left behind. Understanding the anima doesn't just help you understand women. It helps you understand yourself, your emotional patterns, your blind spots, your deepest desires. And when you bring her into the light, you begin to relate with more clarity, more compassion, and more truth. So let me ask you, have you ever loved someone? not for who they were, but for what they represented to you inside. If that question resonates, I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Let's open up this conversation together. And if you want to keep exploring the deeper layers of the psyche archetypes, like the shadow, the persona, or the animus, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Because the more we understand the forces shaping us from within, the more power we have to live with intention on the outside. Thanks for watching. And remember, the journey inward is where the real transformation begins.